Hello and thank you for tuning into Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm your host, Brandon Yates, and as always, I'm joined by my two phenomenal co-hosts, Yang Guang and Tianyu. And today we are going to be getting back onto the tennis conversation. And even though we haven't seen that much lately in terms of, Grand Slam action or, really headline-dominating results, we have seen some headline news recently featuring some of the biggest names in tennis. And I think we can start with that, Yang Guang. Of course, we know Novak Djokovic has now parted ways with his coach Goran Ivanisevic. And I guess it kind of makes sense with what's going on with Djokovic at the moment, which we will get into. But just from your side of things, what do you make of that pretty groundbreaking decision, particularly in such a pivotal year, I think, in Novak Djokovic's career?
Yeah, this move means Djokovic is not happy with what happened with him in the past couple of months, especially the exit from the Australian Open. I don't think Djokovic accepted that very well, but the final straw was still the shocking defeat to Luca Nardi at Indian Wells. Yeah. Basically a nobody on the ATP Tour. I guess that loss pissed him off and led to this decision.
But I guess someone with younger joints and, finding it easier to run. And I think that's something we'll be commenting on throughout the entire season, is that we may, unfortunately, see with the likes of Novak Djokovic and other aging stars, some young guns coming through that might just be feeling good on a certain day and just use their, just youth and energy, vigor to take advantage of, some players that are potentially 10, 15 years older than them.
Yeah, I guess those nights happened a lot to players like Medvedev, a nobody that suddenly feeling his rhythm on the court and beats players like Medvedev. But
he doesn't really have an excuse, though. He's not that old. But I mean, someone like Djokovic, unfortunately, he's at that point where age is just going to start getting the best of him.
Yeah, but still, that usually doesn't occur to Djokovic a lot.
But maybe this is just the start of that, unfortunately, for him. And for fans of his, because I think even as fans, or just, not necessarily fans, but admirers of him and what he's achieved, I think we still had high hopes about what he could do this season. And as things have started, it is still early, but it's not looking good.
Look, Djokovic has experienced a decline in 2024. I think no one would deny this, even himself. But what resulted in this decline? Is it truly because Ivanisevic can no longer fine-tune Djokovic's tennis and improve his games? Or it's due to the fact that Djokovic has reached a point in his career that his body no longer allows him to keep that level?
Yeah, what do you think?
I talked about this during the Australian Open, that Djokovic had rarely shown fatigue on the court. Yeah. He started to give up on some points. He suffered more often from heavy legs. Nobody can beat the aging problems. I guess Djokovic is going through such a period. But
with that in mind, is a different coach or losing a coach going to help that?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, me either.
Ivanisevic is a coach, not Aladdin's lamp that can give Djokovic a pair of 20-year-old legs.
And I think he was brought in for a specific purpose because, as far as I can recall, the coach is renowned for, as a player, having a big serve. And I think he was brought in to assist, with multiple elements of Djokovic's game, but I think mostly to assist him with his serving, which I suppose we have seen certain signs of improvement since he has come in as a coach. But I think now, like we've already mentioned, there are more pressing matters for Djokovic to deal with, right?
Yeah. Just like what Ivanisevic said in his interview, to him and his team, Djokovic's techniques are already perfect, the best in the world already.
Agreed.
His forehand, backhand, serve, maybe not his overhand shots, but anything else. He's the best of the best. But Djokovic doesn't see this the same way. According to Ivanisevic, Djokovic would often wake up in the morning and say, I had a terrible backhand yesterday. We need to work on that. Even though his coaching team thought there's no problem. There's nothing to improve.
With that in mind, and I think this is going to be something that could potentially plague him at this point in his career when it's previously actually been an advantage for him. He will be so critical on himself.
Yeah.
And he's at a point where his body can't keep up with
Sustain
his own
the level.
No, his body can't keep up with his own standards.
Yeah.
And the problem is, I don't think he's dropped his standards, but his body has
The
obviously
bar's still
dropped from
high.
his performance levels that he's been used to. And I think that's going to be something that provides Djokovic with a lot of anxiety, and something that he hasn't potentially prepared to deal with mentally. So I think that's something, having that over-analysis and that over-criticism of yourself when you're young and you want to be the best, I think is a good thing. But when you're starting to decline and you still have those insane levels of
requirements.
of self-expectation, I think it's actually going to mess with him, because he's going to think, what's wrong? I can't figure it out. I'm going to fire my coach. And he also recently got rid of his agents, if I'm not mistaken. So he's getting rid of a lot of people that have been there for the biggest parts of his success.
Yeah.
And he probably needed them now more than he ever has. And now it seems like he's resorted to knee-jerk reactions to something that coaches and agents and people that have his best interests in mind can't actually change. It's something that he has to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agreed. I mean, his attitude towards fine-tuning his own game, I get it, because that's how every sports superstar asks for themselves.
They're obsessive, literally.
Yeah. Always more, always better.
And they overanalyze every single detail of their performances, and also they generally their own harshest critic.
This might have worked the previous couple of times when Djokovic replaced his coaches, either Becker or Agassi. But at the current stage, I do think a new coach is not what he needs, rather a new body.
That would be nice.
Djokovic
You probably also find that these high-level athletes have access to new body technology and stem cell research and that kind of thing that we have no idea about. So maybe next year, Djokovic will come out with robotic legs that look like human legs. And then in 10 years' time, we've got a world anti-doping body. We're going to need a world anti-robotics body.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Djokovic said lately that he might not even need a coach right now. I agree. He can totally coach himself on the tour.
I mean, at this point and with all of his experience, I get that, but I also think he needs someone to shake him and say, wake up, like you're not 22 anymore. You can't do the things that you expect of yourself. So without a coach, my only concern is that he might not be able to take advantage of these remaining years of his career, because he's still expecting the same performances of himself that he achieved 10 years ago. Whereas if he has a coach and a nutritionist and doctors telling him, like, look, you're going to be aging, you're still capable of great success, but you need to alter your game. You need to realize that you can't do the things that you used to do physically. I'm concerned that he might miss out on utilizing these final years of his career. And they say no man is an island. No matter how successful you are, no matter how talented you are, no matter how experienced you are, I think you still need people in your corner to provide alternative opinions. They say successful people that don't have people around them telling them no, or sometimes disagreeing with their thoughts and their opinions, it can lead to madness. Because if you just agree with everything that you believe, you can kind of create a false reality for yourself. And I think if Djokovic doesn't have the right people around him, he might go out there with the mentality that he's got the body of a 24-year-old and play in a way that's not best suited for his body and for this stage in his career. Because I think if he does play with that in mind, I think he can still achieve some pretty phenomenal things in 2024.
Yeah, but look, Djokovic won 3 Grand Slams in 2023. Is it a really good time for him to invite someone in his team to say, no, Djokovic, it's not time?
I mean, it might be time, maybe not necessarily to change, the playing style, yes, because I think that he can't rely on, that defensive style that he used to have where he ran for every shot and was literally a brick wall when he faced opposition. So I think he does need to change certain elements of his game, but he doesn't need somebody to change the way he serves or the way he hits a forehand or the way that he hits a backhand. But I still think he needs people to tell him, you are amazing, but you need to alter your style to best utilize this
Yeah.
final phase of your career. And someone needs to tell, because, he might not be telling himself, I'm on a decline. He needs someone to tell him, look, mate, nature's going to catch up with you. And this is the way you can slow that process down.
Yeah, I mean, Djokovic is not on my contacts, but I do know.
He's on mine. Let me just quickly send him a DM. You need to get it together, boy.
But I do know he certainly would disagree.
Yeah, I think, but that's the problem, is that because these guys with these big egos
personality,
and no one tells them no, and they think they are the best, and they are, he is the best. I still think he's the best. But the problem is if you don't have people whose opinions you respect, even if they don't mirror your own, I think that's a troublesome formula. What do you think?
I agree. I think I totally agree. I think the decision of him changing his coach is totally understandable.
Yeah.
Because, he had probably one of the best seasons of his career last year under Ivanisevic coach.
I'm struggling too, don't worry. Let's just call him Goran.
Yeah, he said on social media that he chose to bring in this coach, the former coach, to help him with his serve, and I think he
I think
did
they've got a good
job
relationship too, right? They're still friends, and like things ended on good terms, so that's a good sign.
Yeah, and he did help turn Djokovic's serve into like a lethal weapon on the court.
Yeah, that paid off.
Like one of the most effective.
Which I think it was one of the very few things he was lacking.
Yeah. And but despite all these past glories, we should still note that he's not playing the best of himself right now.
But is that a coaching issue? He's 37.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm gonna say. Yeah, he's
is it not a medical issue, not a coaching issue? He should fire his doctor.
I think from losing his first match at the Australian Open since 2018 to Jannik Sinner, to the shock defeat against an unknown rookie, I think these defeats kind of served as wake-up calls.
How old was
for him?
I don't know if we know this information, but how old was that rookie? Do we know?
21.
I mean,
very young.
Nature just said, "Sorry, old man.
Yeah,
I'm gonna outrun you."
These defeats kind of reminded him at the toll his age has taken on him.
But then, why does he then think, "Oh, this is a coaching issue"? You know what I mean? Or an agent issue? It doesn't make sense. Hopefully, he keeps Goran in his corner as someone. Maybe that's something that he can do. So he can keep what is this guy's name? Ivanisevic in his corner as someone to. As a mentor. But I don't think the issues that he's going through right now are related to coaching. So it is a very strange decision made on his part to clear out his team at this point. It doesn't seem logical to me. And when big celebrities and big egos are making illogical decisions, that's a sign that things are not going right.
I think his decision can be partly explained by his still fierce desire to hang on, to extend his career, and to win more major titles, and that urge kind of makes him wants to need more. He needs someone to tell him how to cope with his age issue.
But I think that urge is also making him make bad decisions. Which does happen, generally when someone is desperate for something, sometimes they resort to desperate measures and sometimes make bad decisions.
Yeah, and
I think this is potentially a bad decision.
Yeah, I think that's why he needs maybe a new coach, because technically Goran can't.
Why does the greatest tennis player in the world, who's won 24 Grand Slams and is the best at every sort of tennis stroke imaginable, need a new coach?
Because technically,
does Ronaldo need a new coach?
He doesn't need more technical guidance ever, but still he needs someone maybe to tell him how to cope with his age issue, how to save energy during matches, or what kind of strategies he needs to take when competing against younger opponents like Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner.
But then maybe he doesn't need a new coach. Maybe he needs a better manager, a better individual to help with analysis, a more fine-tuned effort from his medical team his, physiology team or whoever deals with his body. I think that needs to be examined more than somebody that was purely coaching him. Yeah. Maybe Ivanisevic was doing more than just coaching Djokovic. Maybe he was also involved in match analysis. Maybe he was involved in, deciding when he takes breaks, when he needs to, see a doctor and that kind of thing. So maybe he's looking for someone to take on a more all-rounded approach to his game, as opposed to just, because I think when we think of a coach, we think of somebody that's just trying to teach him how to serve better, how to hit a forehand better. But maybe at that level, maybe the coach takes on a lot more responsibilities than we're aware of.
Yeah. Or maybe, this decision is based on past experience, because when Djokovic experienced those declines, he decided to replace the coach, and he bounced back.
But it was a different point in his career, wasn't it?
Yeah,
when he was still more youthful, I suppose.
He needs some changes.
Maybe he thought,
but he needs different changes now. Back then, I think he still had more vigor and didn't have any aging problems. So changing a coach when you don't have physiological issues makes sense. But when you clearly have, when nature says you're going to have physiological issues, because nature says a 37-year-old is not going to have as much stamina as a 21-year-old, 18-year-old, then maybe changes are required, but different changes.
Maybe he needs to ask Roger Federer how to adapt.
Listen, that man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just retire and make insane amounts of money through marketing. But again, there's someone that didn't deal with aging very well.
Yeah,
Nadal didn't deal with aging very well either. So there's clearly something going on in that area of, even at that level of their game, that is being missed, because I think a lot of the superstars are declining a lot faster than they need to. And I think Djokovic has the opportunity to reverse that trend, because we've seen we saw a crazy downfall with Nadal. To be fair, there were injuries involved, but I think a lot of that was due to playing too much. Federer, his decline also when he started aging was incredibly fast. But that being said, that's something that I also anticipated, because I never felt that Federer was an athlete. I thought he was a phenomenal tennis player. So I always felt like aging would hit him harder than most. Djokovic is a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal tennis player. And I think that he now, in this weird period that he's going through in terms of half of his team disappearing, he has the opportunity to figure out a way to reverse the trend that has plagued other tennis players that are also in that GOAT conversation.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And speaking of, the youthful process and, up-and-comers, Jannik Sinner has, shown remarkable form so far this season. As we know, he won the Australian Open. He was phenomenal at the Miami Open. Yang Guang, is he the best men's tennis player in the world at the moment?
As a Djokovic fan, I hate to say this, but yes, Sinner now is the best player. After winning the Australian Open, his confidence, his feeling on the court, it's like an overnight evolution. Previously, we might say, when Sinner meets the other three of the top four, Djokovic, Carlos Alcaraz, Daniil Medvedev, it would be 50-50. But now it seems like things are leaning more towards Sinner's side, facing no matter who.
Yeah.
But meantime, I must say, Sinner hasn't reached the level that Djokovic played in his peak time. Not even close.
Might be a little bit too soon.
Yeah, so there might be still full expectations from Sinner in his following playing career in terms of where he would be going. Would be another path towards one of the greatest of all time, or would be a plunge like what happened to Dominic Thiem.
Right.
I'm very curious of what his performances would be at the rest of the 3 Grand Slams this year.
Yeah, we seem to do that in tennis. I think because we've been so eagerly waiting for somebody to come along to take the reins of the former greats who I've mentioned multiple times already in this podcast. So we have seen the rise and fall of a couple of other players like Thiem, but it does seem like Sinner is getting something right. And funny enough, he did say in an interview recently, I've got the quote here, he said he has a lot of respect for the players he faces, but he doesn't fear to face them. And I think that's something we've seen from previous players, is that they've got the talent, But when they get to those final moments and, it's now or never, and they're facing some of the greats and, some players that they look up to, they kind of falter on the mental side. And in previous tennis podcasts, we've discussed how the mental side of things was equally important for the likes of Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic in terms of their success. And it seems like Sinner's recognized that. And look, I mean, he has a phenomenal forehand, and he's also shown that he's got incredible stamina. He fought back from 2 sets down against Medvedev in that Australian Open final. Sorry, guys. Literally still a phlegm. But I think what he said there is something that hopefully he can maintain as, like you said, Yang Guang, as his career progresses, that he can keep that mental edge of not fearing his opposition, particularly as the likes of Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic sort of fade away. And he finds himself in that pool of players that's looking to take that crown. And I think the mental side of things is going to be as important as the talent. And it seems like he's recognized that. Do you think that he can go on and show consistency as his career progresses? And is he the best in the world right now?
Yeah, probably. He's really improving really fast. My first impression for him used to be like he was a good player, but maybe a very good one among those emerging players, but not. I wouldn't call him a top player like his peer Alcaraz. But after taking a look at his recent matches,
I think we got a little bit too excited about Alcaraz either too soon as well, because I wouldn't consider him a great yet. He's achieved some great results, like Sinner has done at Wimbledon. I think the Wimbledon thing was huge, but he's also just shown signs of ups and downs.
Yeah, he's still young. His forms can be.
But again,
you can experience
but it seems like a lot of these emerging talents are going through that, and it's going to take something different to differentiate them. And maybe Sinner's recognized that.
But what's different about Sinner is that if you take a look at his, like you said, the journey of him at the Australian Open throughout to the final is incredible. In the final we know how much better Djokovic could play in that semifinal, and Djokovic was obviously a lot under par at that match, but still seeing Novak Djokovic not producing a single break point throughout a best of 5 match, that was like the best proof of how Sinner has evolved.
Or that Djokovic needs a new doctor.
Or a new robotic engineer.
Exactly.
Yeah, like you said, we've seen many times that those younger guys flinch in the face of the greats like Djokovic, but that didn't happen to Sinner. He was very composed, and he never let Djokovic get comfortable, and he just competed exceptionally well. And with the fantastic start in 2024, I think it will be really exciting to watch the heights that he will be able to reach this year.
Yeah, if you think about it, Sinner's career right now looked very much what happened to Djokovic when Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal
was like
dominated men's tennis.
When that rivalry really took off.
Everyone was expecting Alcaraz and Djokovic would dominate the men's tennis, but Jannik Sinner just came from nowhere and broke that duel.
Yeah.
Maybe Djokovic should try and poach Sinner's coach or his doctor, or sneak into his hotel room at night and steal his knees or something like that. But yeah, I think it has been interesting, and it is still early days. I hope we don't get too excited about Sinner like we did with Alcaraz. That being said, Alcaraz can still bounce back and have a phenomenal career, which I think he will. But it seems like from Sinner's comments, it looks like he is one of the very few of that young generation that's taken the mental side of his game very seriously. And I think that's going to lead potentially to a long career of success if he is able to manage himself well and, avoid injuries and that kind of thing. So he has really come out of nowhere. But I think that he is an exciting prospect, and he's shown that he can shine on a relatively consistent level as well as on the biggest stage, which I think is a very good sign for someone that's still pretty young and hasn't even come close to reaching his full potential. But someone that has reached their full potential and is just going through a really difficult time at the moment with injuries and just doesn't seem to be getting back to his best as Andy Murray. But I mean, that being said, Yang Guang, he's had 2 massive comebacks. He's had a relatively successful career. He's won Grand Slams. He's been a world number one. And I think he's achieved more than people actually thought he would when he broke onto the scene, just because of all of the other players he was competing with. But at this point, it's kind of, from a fan's perspective, or just a tennis fan's perspective, it's kind of like a sad journey. When I watch Andy Murray, I just kind of feel sorry for him.
Yeah.
But that being said, maybe from his side of things, it's different. But when you look at the situation, do you think it's time for Andy Murray to hang it up?
Yeah, it's really bad news to hear Andy Murray suffered yet another major injury. It's devastating for him.
Djokovic, don't hire his doctor.
It seems like in every sport there are athletes you feel sad for their career. You can't just stop thinking what they could have achieved if they hadn't suffered injuries that ruined their career.
So many examples.
Derrick Rose, Yao Ming, Kaká.
Kaká. Wow. Yeah. That's a big one for me.
Yeah, and Andy Murray is one of them. If Djokovic's story is like a fantasy movie, I would say Murray's story is pure reality. Sometimes
a bit of a sad drama too, like a... Oh,
yeah. Sometimes when everything looks promising in your life, something hits you out of the blue that completely detours your life. But what Murray has taught us is that you should never give in, even though things may never return to the good again. To Murray, it's like...
Maybe that's how we should look at him. As an example of someone that has shown, like, I will never give up, I will never give in, I will keep fighting, particularly for young people, I think, and young tennis players wanting to make it. I think that's such an important message.
Yeah, I mean, to Murray, it's not like a film with a happy ending when the hero comes back from failure and he beats the evil. He didn't come back.
If he somehow goes on to win a Grand Slam or a gold medal at the Olympics, how awesome would that be?
Yeah, that would be like...
I think, what's his name? Who's the Oppenheimer director? Christopher Nolan will just be in his box, like, taking notes. Next big film.
Yeah. But Murray didn't recover to where he was, and he might not ever. But he never allowed him to stop, no matter how hopeless things are looking. That's the thing I admired most from Murray.
But from that side of things, and I definitely do admire it, that being said, he's a wealthy guy. He's a success. No, you know what I mean? He's a wealthy guy. He's a successful guy. I think if he wasn't, even though it looks sad from our perspective, I think if he wasn't enjoying it, or if he didn't think that he still had something to gain or achieve, surely he would have thrown in the towel by now.
Yeah.
So maybe we're not... I mean, he's always kind of been like a dour, like kind of... He's never been like an excitable character, it's a really tough match. Even though he wins like a Grand Slam. He's always been kind of...
You can't blame him.
He's not a very excitable person.
That's a good Murray.
So, thank you. But, so maybe he's having more fun than we realize. Tianyu, what do you think?
Well, anyway, I think it's time for him to say... goodbye.
Yeah. But maybe, like I've said, maybe he's not showing his joy. Maybe we're just not seeing it. Maybe he's having a ball out there.
Yeah, but just take a look at his matches now, and you'll realize that his like greatest strengths before, which are his movement and his speed, have now turned into his like greatest weaknesses. And his performance in recent years has really been quite mediocre. Just troubled by numerous injuries.
Yeah, but with that in mind, there has to be a reason that he's continuing, because like I said, he is a wealthy guy, he's a successful guy. I'm sure there's plenty of other ventures that he's currently involved in that I'm sure he would love to dedicate more time to. So there must be a reason that he's still playing. He must I'm assuming he must be enjoying it.
He must love tennis.
He must.
His motivation is still there. He's been working and practicing really hard and trying to regain his form, but we only ended up in getting lost in yet another injury.
Because it's definitely not a situation where he's broke and he's desperate to keep making money and he doesn't have a choice to keep playing tennis. It's definitely not that situation. So I mean, you think that he should call it in, right?
Yeah.
Just from your opinion, why do you think he's still playing?
Like we said.
if you had to just like get it down to like one or two sentences, why do you think he's still playing? And how long do you think he'll keep going for? Do you think he will literally keep playing until his legs give up?
But from I don't know what he thinks about his career.
No, but like, what if you had to guess, what do you think it is? Like, if you just like, for me, I have no idea what sort of mental state he's in. I don't know exactly why he's still going. But from just off the top of my head, if I had to guess, I think that he's enjoying himself, and I think that he still believes that he has more to give, and that he doesn't want to retire and have regrets. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
He might have a completely different reason for continuing, which he hasn't really shared with the world. But that's just my assumption.
Maybe he just enjoys playing matches, enjoy the feeling of competing with someone.
But at the end of the day, Murray didn't win many games, many matches this year. He always lost matches. Are you happy with every loss you have to endure? And
I think when you go home in a Lamborghini to probably a 10-bedroom mansion, he probably doesn't mind too much. But I hear what you're saying. Like, it's never good for the ego to keep losing and to keep disappointing. But I think it can still, because he has already achieved pretty high levels of success, I don't think he's chasing something that he hasn't attained. I think he's just going out there because, like we predict, he enjoys tennis. And I also think he just wants to leave it all out there. I don't think he's concerned about going out on top or leaving while he's at the top of his game. I think his mental state might be, I'm going to give this... No, I think he's just thinking, I'm going to give this everything I've got, and I'm literally going to go until my last breath. Which, from a fan's perspective, is hard to watch. But I think just as an outsider, to see someone really give their all and just keep going no matter what, even when they don't have to, I think that's pretty remarkable.
It would be really noble of him to think like that.
Yeah, and I think that potentially is the state that he's in. I hope he's not in pain. I hope he is enjoying himself, but that would be my assumption. I think that he just wants to literally leave it all on the court and retire and say, look, I did everything possible, and I never gave up, and this is what I was able to achieve.
That's why I really hope he would not retire this time.
Yeah.
I really hope his inspiring story can go as long as possible.
Me too.
I expect Murray to think the same way, and I believe we will see him return to the courts.
But I believe
at some point in the future.
Yeah, but I think no one will think any less of him because of his decision to retire right now.
But with that in mind, guys, I think there's still a lot to look forward to in 2024. There's still so many interesting elements to keep an eye on. I think of the progression of Jannik Sinner, the progression of Alcaraz, waiting to see what Djokovic does, particularly before the Olympics and other Grand Slam titles. And there's also a lot to look forward to on the women's side. I think there's a lot of competition there as well. There aren't any real standout individuals. I think it's still very open-ended on that side of things. Plenty to look forward to. But that's all we have time for on this week's episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, we will be back next week with our latest topic, and we'll see you then.
This is CGTN Radio. Hear the difference.